Week 16 of the NFL season is officially here, so in today's video, let's go ahead and do my weekly Week 16 predictions to every single game. But if you guys do go on to enjoy the video, hit the like and subscribe button. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin with the Thursday night football matchup between the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. This game should not only be interesting on the field, but it has a lot of really big things that make this game that much more important. This game is extremely important. It has a lot of ramifications towards the potential AFC wildcard race. Right now, both these teams are obviously very similar in record, and the Broncos are currently the 6th seed with the LA Chargers as the 7th seed. Obviously, if the Chargers were to lose this game, they could be in potential risk of getting out of the playoffs entirely, though I will say they're not terribly in risk because Indianapolis, Miami, and the Bengals are like 2 games behind, so barring the Chargers collapsing, they should be in, but it is a little bit more worrying, and it's going to make these last couple weeks that much more important if they were to lose this game versus Denver. This game is also important because the 7th seed as of today, as of when I'm making this video, would have to go up against the Buffalo Bills, who are, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL, whereas the 6th seed will have to go up against the Steelers, who I think are also a good team, but not as good as Buffalo. So this game's very important, and in terms of the actual play on the field, the Chargers offense has not been good these few weeks. Injuries, J.K. Dobbins not playing, that offense hasn't looked good, and the defense has taken a bit of some step backs when they go up against better offenses. Bo Nix, however, is coming off his worst game of the season, throwing a couple interceptions and just not playing terribly well, but I thought he played well enough later in the game to eventually win that one. This game for me is really going to come down to turnovers and defenses, and ultimately I just have more faith in Denver's defense and Denver's offense right now, so I'm going to pick the Denver Broncos to win 21-13. Moving over to a Saturday game between the Houston Texans and Kansas City Chiefs. Now, a few weeks ago, this game would have been that much more interesting, but truth be told, these are two teams that are kind of struggling offensively. Both have obviously great quarterbacks, lots of talents, and are two obviously AFC playoff contenders and will be in the playoffs. However, this game is a little bit concerning because both these offenses hasn't played very well, so I'm excited to see which offense can actually step up and eventually win this game. I would say, offensively speaking, the Chiefs have been better than Houston because Houston just hasn't looked very good lately. That's not to say that the Houston Texans haven't had moments. They still have Nico Collins. I'm excited to see what Joe Mixon can do later in the playoffs. But Kansas City, they're just a better team right now, quite simply put. They're a better offensive and defensive team. Houston is just not playing a good brand of football. So I'm going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs to win. I believe this is also a home game for Kansas City. It is. So that is also going to make things a little bit easier for Kansas City. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs to beat the Houston Texans in a close game, but eventually the Chiefs offense will put together a drive to put it away. I have the final score 24-17. Moving over to yet another massive AFC playoff game here, potentially between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. Obviously, AFC North rivals. Both teams desperately want this win. The Ravens are a game behind the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of tying up their records. So if they win this game, I'm not sure what the tiebreakers would be, but I believe they should be in the playoffs and maybe potentially have a better shot at winning the actual division. This game will be close. I think it also does depend on what version of George Pickens we're going to get. Is he going to play on the field? And if he does he play at a high level? And also, can that Steelers offensive line protect Russell Wilson as well as effectively run the football? Last time these two teams played, the final score was 18-16 in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Lamar Jackson did not play good. However, the Steelers are a little bit more banged up than they were last time around. Obviously, I talked about George Pickens. We're not sure if he's going to be able to go, as well as TJ Watt, who also suffered an injury. I'm not sure if he's going to be playing either. And those are two massive parts of both sides of the football. Whereas for Baltimore, they're dealing with their fair share of injuries as well. But Lamar Jackson's healthy, Derrick Henry's healthy, and as long as you have those two guys, you should be set up for success. So I do think the Ravens offense will be a lot better in this one. So I'm kind of leaning towards the Ravens to win this one. I think the offense will play better, and I'm just not sure if Russell Wilson and the offense can really match what the Ravens are going to be able to do. So I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens to win 30-22. Moving on to the Atlanta Falcons versus the New York Giants. Now, it was just announced that Michael Penix Jr. will be the starting quarterback this week versus the Giants, and truth be told, I don't hate the decision, especially if you're going to do it now. This is a very winnable matchup, and If Michael Penix Jr. goes out there and looks awesome, then great, which by the way, he should because the Giants defense sucks. But at the same time, if he goes out there and struggles, then that's obviously worrying because that's a bad Giants team and it's a pretty clear sign to put Kirk Cousins back in the game. I will say I do believe that Michael Penix will play well. That is a really bad New York Giants offense and defense, so I think they'll get plenty of opportunities. They're probably going to rely on Bijan and Tyler Algier. I will say the Giants could make things a little bit more interesting with their good defensive line, but I think Atlanta will eventually pull away in this one. Hopefully Michael Penix Jr. flashes some real potential and can help them win this game. So I have the Atlanta Falcons winning 20-10. Next up, an NFC North matchup between the hobbled Detroit Lions versus the Chicago Bears. I want to say this about the Detroit Lions. I was contemplating making another video on them because I recently did one, but since that video, they've gotten through a ton of injuries. But I just want to say this, I'm not too worried about the Detroit Lions. I still think they have a chance to win the NFC despite the injuries. That offense is just way too good, even with the Montgomery injury. Am I a little bit more worried about them? Yes, but I still think they're one of the best teams in the NFL. Maybe just not the best team right now. That doesn't mean that they can't be the best team and that they can't win the NFC, because I think they could, but just throwing that out there. In this matchup, though, you're going up against the Bears team that probably won't be able to take advantage of all of the Detroit Lions injuries. Hopefully this week that Lions defense can come out of it healthy and also playing at a better level, because that Bears offense has just not been good at all lately. I think this one should be pretty one-sided. I think the Lions offense should be totally fine with or without David Montgomery, so I think they're going to win 31-19. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals versus the Carolina Panthers. This game is interesting in a number of ways. Obviously, Arizona's still trying to find a way to make the playoffs. Right now, they're in the outside looking in, but with a win here versus Carolina and potentially an LA Rams loss, which they have a kind of difficult matchup, and potentially even a Seattle Seahawks loss because they're probably going to lose too, then Arizona can all of a sudden put themselves back in the conversation to win the division. This is actually kind of lining up to be a pretty good week for Arizona, especially if the LA Rams were to lose. For Arizona, I like this matchup versus the Carolina Panthers. The passing attack hasn't been as good for Kyler Murray and the offense lately, so going up against a Panthers defense that just doesn't have the talent, I do expect the offense to play at a much higher level. Also, hopefully Trey McBride can get in the end zone in this one. I need him to. I am in my fantasy championship and he's on my team. Whereas on the opposite side, the Carolina Panthers had kind of a dud week last week versus the Dallas Cowboys. They played really well the few weeks before this one, then the Cowboys game, so hopefully for Bryce Young and that offense, they can kind of get back on track. I will say the Cardinals defense is better this year, but they're still not great. So I expect the Carolina Panthers to be able to move the football. The question will be, can they convert in the red zone, which they've been pretty good at this year. So I'm going to pick the Cardinals to win this one just because of how important this game is if they want to make the playoffs. But I do think it will be a close competitive game with both offenses moving the ball well. It's just probably going to come down to those small little details like penalties, turnovers, stuff like that. So ultimately, I do think eventually Arizona will find a way to win this one, maybe on a game-winning field goal. We'll have to see. I have the final score, Arizona 23 to Carolina 21. Then we have the LA Rams versus the New York Jets. I talked about it a little bit earlier. This is not an easy matchup for the LA Rams because, yes, the Jets aren't good. Their record isn't good, but they have been playing better football lately. Mainly on the offensive end, Aaron Rodgers has been a lot better lately. And that LA Rams defense, while it's been better lately, and obviously the defensive line is really good, they are susceptible to really smart quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, so that could make this one a bit more interesting, but I just think the LA Rams offensively will be able to take advantage of a lot of the Jets' faults on defense. They should be able to run the ball fairly well with Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, who, by the way, Kyren Williams has been getting a boatload of carries these past few weeks. With a healthy Puka Nacua and a healthy Cooper Kupp, the offense for the LA Rams should do enough against a Jets defense that has not been very good lately. I expect this one to be kind of similar to that Arizona Panthers game where it's like, I think both offenses will move the ball well. It's just going to come down to who's going to make mistakes, and the Jets are probably going to make the mistakes. So I'm going to pick the LA Rams to win 24-21. Next up, a important NFC East matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. Important in terms of the context of not necessarily the division, but in terms of the wild card race. The Commanders are currently 9-5 and are, as of right now, the 7th seed potentially, but if they were to lose this game and if Seattle were to somehow win their game, I actually think that Washington would then become the 8th seed, which would be pretty disappointing for Washington because of how good they've been this year. This is a tough matchup. Philadelphia is arguably the best team in the NFL. Their offense looked so much better last week versus Pittsburgh, even though there were still a couple issues here and there. Jaden Daniels has played well, and Washington does typically play the Philadelphia Eagles really close. In their last matchup, it was a close game where the Eagles offense just eventually kind of took over. Washington couldn't really do much on the day. The Eagles offense played pretty well in that game. The Washington Commanders offense just couldn't really get the job done. Some turnovers, some issues here and there. I kind of think that could happen again in this one. The Eagles are just, in my opinion, a better team. They're not necessarily better coached, but better just personnel. And I think that is ultimately what it's going to come down to in this one. Daniels, I think, might struggle in this game because of how good the Eagles defense has been lately, though I think he will have a couple nice drives here and there. I have the final score: Philadelphia 28, Washington 24. Then we move over to the Cleveland Browns versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, so kind of tells you everything you need to know. They're clearly tanking at this point, let's just be honest. Because DTR, while maybe being a bit more talented at this point than Jameis Winston, isn't a better quarterback than Jameis Winston, even if Jameis turns the ball over every other possession. This one is pretty clear and obvious to me. DTR is not going to be able to match the production of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I kind of think this one could be a bit of a blowout. I'm going to obviously pick the Bengals to win. I think the Bengals offense will be fine, even though I don't think they'll score like 40 plus points like they have a couple weeks ago. But I'm going to pick the Bengals to win 28-13. Moving on to our last noon game between the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans. Now, Mason Rudolph will be starting over Will Levis. Will Levis just hasn't looked very good this year, and I kind of think the Tennessee Titans might be drafting a quarterback if they're in the proper spot in the draft. With that said, this game does have some ramifications for the Colts if they were to win this one. They're still in the playoff race. Obviously, they would need a lot of things to go their way, such as a potential LA Chargers loss, but it's not looking very good for Indianapolis. But, you know, crazier things have happened. The Colts just haven't looked very good lately. They had a good first half last week, but then everything fell apart in the second half. There's going to be turnovers in this game. However, Mason Rudolph is less turnover prone than Will Levis, though if he does struggle, I'm sure his leash will be a little bit short, and they're probably going to put Will Levis back in the game if he doesn't play very well. Looking into this game, the Colts are obviously going to try to run the football a crap ton. That's kind of what they're known for. And the Tennessee Titans defense isn't great against the run, but they're definitely not bad against the run. They're also a fairly good team against the pass, so I don't expect a very high scoring game from either team. It's just going to come down to which quarterback makes more mistakes, and gotta be honest with you, I think Mason Rudolph might be less mistake prone than Anthony Richardson right now, even though I think Richardson's a better quarterback. He's just more mistake prone. These are two good defenses, but not great, even though I think Tennessee has the ability to be a whole lot better. The Colts won their earlier matchup by 3 points with Joe Flacco starting, so obviously two different quarterbacks are now in the ball game, so this game you really don't have to take much from that one. I have the Tennessee Titans winning in this one. I think they'll make less mistakes, and if there's a pick six in this game, it could be in favor of Tennessee, which is like the first time ever this year, so I'm going to pick the Titans to win 21-14. Then we begin our 3 o'clock window with the Minnesota Vikings versus the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this one should be interesting because we do not know the status of Geno Smith, though there is some optimism that he might be able to play. Obviously, if Geno does play, that completely does change the way this game looks at. I still think Minnesota will win, spoiler alert, with or without Geno Smith, but with Geno Smith, this game does become a little bit more interesting. It's just also going to be questioned about how much of Geno Smith is it really going to be. Is it going to be a fully healthy Geno Smith, or is it going to be 50% of Geno Smith? Can he move around in the pocket? Can he step into it? Like, what can he do in the pocket? And can he make some plays while running? I don't know. So Minnesota's defense will probably try to blitz a lot in this one, make Geno Smith uncomfortable, force him to make a lot of throws while blitzers are right up in his face. It's not going to be an easy day for Geno Smith. He's going to have to play at a very high level if they even want a chance to win, because the offense for Minnesota has been really good as of late. Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Sam Darnold has been awesome, and they do have a decent ground game going. So I think this one does favor Minnesota pretty clearly. It would take a almost Superman-like performance from Geno Smith. So I'm going to pick the Minnesota Vikings to win this one 31-17. Moving on to the Patriots versus the Bills. The Bills are, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL, whereas the Patriots are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Though I will say the Patriots are one of those teams that you cannot take lightly, because for whatever reason, they just are one of those teams that can beat good teams out of nowhere, and this is one of those matchups. So a bit of a trap game game here for the Buffalo Bills, but they're on a bit of a different mission right now than some of those past Buffalo teams. This team is a true championship contender, so I don't think that they will overlook New England too much. This one is in pretty obvious one. Every advantage in favor would favor the Buffalo Bills, so I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to call an upset. I got the Buffalo Bills winning a closer game than what they've done the past few weeks. I'm going to pick the Buffalo Bills to win 27-14. Moving on to a game where I think both these teams are going to try to lose this one, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, the Raiders are trying to get the #1 pick to draft Shedeur Sanders, whereas the Jacksonville Jaguars are also trying to get the #1 pick to take Travis Hunter. This one is pretty interesting because I just feel like you're going to see two teams that have zero intentions of winning, so it's probably going to be really ugly and kind of entertaining. This game is actually very, very important come, mock draft season and draft season. Again, I think both these teams should try to lose. We're going to get probably a Mac Jones versus a Desmond Ridder matchup, so not a very fun game, but this game is going to be interesting, and I probably will be watching this game pretty closely to see which team is going to try to lose more. I expect some turnovers. I expect some horrible play. I do think they're similar in terms of talent level. Brian Thomas Jr. has been really good. The Jaguars are coming off a pretty impressive game, even though they didn't win last week, so I do think Jacksonville has a chance to win this one, whereas for the Raiders, they've just shown almost zero life. Yes, it was a bit of a closer game with Atlanta, but Atlanta's not very good right now either, so I don't know. I'm going to pick the Jaguars to win because I just think the Las Vegas Raiders have a little bit more to lose. So I'm going to pick the Jaguars to win 16-10. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins versus the San Francisco 49ers. Now, this game is going to be played in Miami. So Miami is going to be obviously in their own weather. So that isn't going to be a factor in this game. But what is going to be a factor in this game is the talent levels of both these teams. These are two very talented teams that are just not playing very well right now. Obviously, the Niners have a bunch of injuries and things aren't really going their way. They also have a lot of drama going on with Devondre Campbell, Deebo Samuel, so on and so forth. However, on the other side, the Dolphins just are lifeless at this point. They're probably not making the playoffs. You got Tua talking about Cabo and all those crazy things that was going on after their most recent loss. So yeah, this is a kind of an interesting game for both these teams because you got two coaches on the hot seat. You got two teams not playing well, and honestly, both these two teams kind of need a win here to just fix the morale a tad bit for both these rosters. This one's interesting. I just feel like San Francisco is more talented, and I think they have the pieces there to slow down what this offense wants to do with their rushing attack and with their speed. I don't think it's going to be a blowout or anything like that. I do think it's going to be a close game that comes down to the wire. I just think eventually Brock Purdy will make more plays than Tua, even though they're going up against a harder defense in Miami. I got the San Francisco 49ers winning 24-20. And then our Sunday game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I feel like I'm kind of a broken record, but this game is also pretty interesting because Dallas is a better team now than what they were earlier in the year, even though they're without their good quarterback Dak Prescott. Cooper Rush has gone in there and played well enough. The offense finally has a rushing attack. The offensive line is also playing better, granted against not so good competition like I think the Giants a few weeks ago and the Bengals and so on and so forth. So you can kind of take that as you will. They're just, they're beating up on some bad teams right now, but they have a little bit of motivation, a little bit of confidence brewing right now. Whereas for Tampa Bay, they've been awesome these past few weeks. They're obviously in the lead for their division. They're probably going to come into this game with a little bit more on the table for them to lose. Whereas for the Cowboys, they're kind of just playing with house money right now. You can kind of do whatever you want out there. Cowboys have a lot of talent, and I don't think that this Buccaneers team should take them lightly. The Cowboys are extremely banged up, and I just don't think they have the talent to match up with Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is just playing way too good offensively, and I think they will drop a lot of points on this inconsistent Dallas Cowboys defense. I think one key in this game is slowing down Micah Parsons. If Micah goes out there and just takes over the game, then yeah, that could be really bad for the Buccaneers, who have shown the ability to sometimes kind of lose control and throw a couple turnovers and have some fumbles and stuff, which could give the Dallas Cowboys some plus fields and make this game a bit more interesting. But if they take care of the football enough and if they can handle Micah Parsons, I think they will win the game, and I think they'll win the game fairly handedly. I have the Buccaneers winning 30-21. And then lastly, we have the Green Bay Packers versus the New Orleans Saints. Now, I don't know if there has been a starting quarterback announced for the Saints, but whether it's Derek Carr, Jake Haener, or Spencer Rattler, who I would probably say Spencer will get the starting job here, I think Green Bay is going to win pretty easily. I will say the Saints have been a competitive team with their new interim head coach, so I don't expect some crazy blowout. I expect a first half close game, but by the second half, the Green Bay Packers will put together some drives and kind of end this one, maybe by the end of the third, early fourth quarter. Jordan Love and the offense has been a lot better lately. They've just been on a bit of a tear as of late. Had a couple close wins, a couple blowout wins, and a couple close losses. The Packers are rolling right now, whereas for the Saints, you're kind of just looking forward to the offseason. I got the Packers winning 30-17. Now, real quick, here's a bit of a summary of everything that I talked about in the video. Obviously, you can see that record right there, 150-74. So I would say my predictions have been pretty good this year. But if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button because I'm on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and I love you guys. Peace.